Graduated in oh, I was like, did I do something wrong? So my name's Zach. I graduated in this May. So I studied computer science, just like you guys. My concentration was in data science, and my minor was in math. And so I'm gonna talk a little bit about my career. And the main thing that I'm hoping to do here is answer some questions on how to um get basically kickstart your career because I kind of had my hands in a bunch of cookie jars. I did, as you'll see, a lot of my experience had AR, VR development, emerging technologies, and then my concentration was data science. And then what I do right now has nothing to do with any of that. So that just goes to show you that computer science is about understanding systems and being able to use the skills that you've learned along the way and apply them to learning a new system and using that knowledge and fundamental understanding of systems to kind of help you learn new stuff as it goes. That's what's pretty cool about CS is no matter where your career goes, you'll be constantly learning new stuff because technology is constantly changing. So that's something that I want to exemplify here. So talk about a little bit. So during my experience, I mentioned that I studied computer science. So from the get-go, I got involved on NASA suits. I kind of like tripped and fell into it. Um, Basically, for those of you who don't know on it, I think there was like a shout out in the Discord, but I don't know if everybody on this presentation or a part of this presentation is in the Discord. But basically, what the NASA suits project is we work directly with NASA to create a AR heads up display or user experience for astronauts to use on both EVA and IVA missions. So what's cool about that is every year NASA releases new challenges. Like I said, you're constantly learning and adapting to new things. So I don't know what this year's challenges are because I'm not on it. But last year it was navigation and also resource gathering. So how are you going to plan for an astronaut to gather resources? How are you going to help them navigate through an EVA mission? So we had to write a bunch of answers to that. Basically, the project goes in two phases. You have the proposal phase where you basically write out how you're going to address it. And then you have the development phase where if you're selected, your team is selected, that is, you work and coordinate with them, you communicate based on the challenge and what they're asking for, and you actually develop and create these solutions. And then you present to them either on site or virtually, which we did for the past 2 years. So that was like a volunteer project, and there I'm probably downplaying it because there's a lot of cool stuff that happened with that. I actually got flown down to Houston, full cost expensed. I've met like 4 or 5 astronauts. I've done the whole shebang. It's super, super, super cool. And my experience with that and working with AR VR actually led me to getting an internship at Raytheon. So I actually through the CS department. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Dr. Dolan's, but a Bradley alum, Brent Dingle, who went to Bradley for undergrad, got his PhD at Texas A&M, called up Bradley and was like, "Hey, do you have anybody with AR VR experience?" And right off the bat, Dolan's knew me and recommended me for the interview. And then I had like what I would presume was the weirdest interview of my entire life, which was that interview, and somehow nailed it. And I got that opportunity. So I spent 2 summers interning at Raytheon Intelligence and Space, specifically in their emerging technology center, which was the Immersive Design Center. So did a lot of similar stuff that I did with NASA, AR, VR, emerging technologies, so like depth sensing, motion tracking, that kind of stuff. And then now I work for Aviano. So they're a digital consulting firm. So basically, what they do is, let's say you're someone who has a website and you're trying to sell something, but your website sucks and you want to improve it. You hire a company like Avianos to help you in your B2B commerce site, or your, and excuse me for using that term, business to business commerce site or business to company site, to allow people to better use your site and improve your ability to sell stuff. So that's what I do there. I'm a Salesforce developer there. And the cool thing about being in consulting, specifically talking about computer science, is basically the stuff that I talked about before, where you're constantly learning new stuff, is amplified because I've already been on 4 different projects while I've been at Avianos, and I started in June. So yes, these projects have a lot in common, but it's basically a different environment with different problems to solve. So I actually had a friend of mine, who didn't study CS, kind of ask what I did, and I explained it, and they're like, "Huh, you just kind of solve puzzles?" And I was like, "Yes, that is literally my job. is to solve puzzles. And I think that's pretty cool. So that's basically what my experience has been up to this point. As you can see, I did a bunch of different stuff, and I can talk a little bit more about like networking and things like that. But I'm going to open it up to this question. Here are some pictures. So here's like mission control. I don't have any pictures of Raytheon because I can't have any pictures of Raytheon. But here's me actually at a NASA testing center there where someone is actively testing something that we did. And then here's a picture from the boat party earlier this year from Avianos. So these pictures are a little bit about my experience, but I think the way for me to help you guys the most is for me to open it up and allow you guys to ask questions like, how did I network? How do I get involved in so many different things? Because I think that's really important because it's not a really simple answer. There are so many different things you can do to start getting involved and start building your portfolio. But if I can use my actual industry experience to help shepherd or guide you guys a little bit, then I think that would be really helpful. So I'm going to open up the questions and see what you guys have, unless there's like a timer where I only have a specific amount of time to present.
Okay, so the stage is open. Do you have, if you have any questions, feel free to bring it up, or if you feel like me to ask the questions on your behalf, that you can type it in the chat.
Yeah, I can open up the chat too if you guys prefer that. I understand uh, if you guys are a little shy. That's okay.
I had a question.
What's
Uh,
up?
was this where you got started in the entire like AR VR business, or?
Yeah, so I got involved with AR VR specifically with the NASA Suits project. So, and I had literally no VR AR experience before that. The project works in the Unity engine. I had dabbled with the Unity engine, but I was by far no expert. Kind of dabbled with the Unity engine a little bit beforehand because again, I got started in my freshman year. So I went into it with practically negative knowledge and then learned as I went. So that's I think a big misconception that a lot of people have is that, oh, I have to have a full understanding of something to apply to this job, when the reality is, or this position or this project, the reality is that most of the time you aren't expected to know everything. That's actually the precursor, is that you don't know everything, but you have the ability to learn. It is awesome if you know stuff beforehand, but don't be afraid to jump into something just because you don't have basically the largest swell of knowledge possible, because the reality is it's almost impossible for you to know everything. So don't apply to an internship because, oh, I don't have the necessary experience necessarily. Just apply. That is like one of the best ways to try to get into these experiences, is apply, try to get interested, because at the very least, if you get one of these interviews from an application for an internship or something like that, that is interview experience that you got. And then you know what an interview is like, whether it's technical or otherwise. I can tell you, I've only had, and maybe I'm the exception, but technical interviews aren't as common as I personally think is perceived, specifically in CS. I have had maybe one technical interview, and that was like a baby technical interview. Obviously, it depends on what job you're applying to, but unless you're applying for like FANG, so Facebook, Google, that kind of stuff, the reality is that a technical interview is basically going to be, have you ever coded before? Is basically what they're saying. They're trying to weed out like people who literally know nothing. And I'm going to gamble here and say that you guys know more than nothing. So don't be afraid of getting your hands dirty and getting in some interviews, because that helps you feel more comfortable in that environment. Interviews are like a big part of the process. You have to learn how to sell yourself. It's a lot more like getting a job, and working a job is a lot more than just programming or knowing how to learn how to program. There are so many other aspects to it, like learning how to network, learning how to interview, that are really, really valuable to the process. So I guess I kind of rambled off topic, but yeah, how I got involved was the NASA Suits project. If you are interested in that, Abby Irwin is the team lead. They're pretty much always looking for developers. So if you want in, I would shoot your shot. I recently actually helped one of the lead devs on that get a job where I'm working now. Actually, he recently accepted an offer. That's like a cool humble brag I like to talk about. Doug Guzman is now part of the A team after he graduates, so I think that's super cool. And so that's just one resource that you could use. And I don't know where you are in school, what your experience is like, but I would say if AR VR is something you're interested in, that is a good way to get your feet wet.
So do you still work with AR and VR these days? Or not so much.
Not so my job right now, no. I do not touch AR VR. I occasionally help out with the NASA project, like some mentoring if they have like questions, because I'm pretty experienced with it. But I don't actively develop an AR VR right now. No, but it is an interest of mine, and I do try to keep up with it as new stuff comes out. But it's not something I actively work in every day. If I am working in it, it's kind of like a side thing for me to have some fun, if that makes sense.
Was that something you were really interested in when you were an undergrad,
So
or did you just sort of kind of end up getting into it?
the latter. I tripped into it. I had no idea there was an AR VR project on campus. I kind of just knew the person who started the project, and they were like, "Hey, I would want you to be on this project." I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "What even is it?" And they're like, "Well, it's AR VR." I'm like, "Well, that sounds super damn cool. Let's do it." And so we did. And so that's where the project started. We literally went from knowing absolutely nothing about AR VR development to now the team is popping off. Like the stuff they're doing right now is actually really, 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 really cool. So it's kind of crazy how it went from like 3 or maybe 5 people sitting in a room having literally no idea what they're doing, banging their head against the wall, to what it is now. So yeah, completely did not know, tripped into it, kind of just really like, I think AR VR is super cool. I think it's really interesting. And I do think it will become more and more important. I think one of the most prominent things is when I was working at Raytheon, they basically had me do the exact same thing we were doing with NASA, which was, but it was a little bit more complicated because it was an inquiry into whether or not at its current stage, Raytheon could implement AR work instructions for its factory workers. How easy would that be to implement? And given that I had made AR work instructions with NASA, I was able to assess that. The answer was no, not even close, because their tech is like super, super ancient. But still, that was pretty cool.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Because of we have 4 presenters, so let's move on to the next one, and we'll take more questions at the end.
For sure. Yeah. Someone can take over.
Who would like to be the next? We have Chandler. We have Tiara. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, am I able to share my screen? I am. Okay. I think I'll just share the whole thing. Okay, so if it would let me click. Sorry. Do you guys see my screen?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, sorry. What I did over the summer was I just started learning about a lot of stuff about like Google Sheets, I guess. I didn't really know. I came from like knowing like absolutely nothing about Sheets at all. And the reason I initially got into it was I play League of Legends, right? I play it like competitively at Bradley, right? And like varsity stuff. And one of my coaches, they would use Google Sheets to like keep their information for like scouting other teams and stuff. And it sufficed, but it was very like disorganized. It was like hard to look at, hard to understand and stuff. And so, and I remember like my dad, who was getting into Google Sheets, was like, he looked at it and he just like ripped it apart. I was like, gosh. I was wondering, is there anything I could do to try like make I guess it like easier, right? And stuff. And so what I worked on was basically trying to take like the information that he put on the sheet and like make it easy to look at. And I kind of fell down a rabbit hole. I ended up making it, I think, generally pretty interactive. I learned a lot about Google Sheets and stuff. So this first page there's really much you can do it. It's just for like keeping track of your own team. And then this next page is, I guess, where there's a bit more stuff. If I zoom out to 50%, can you guys see what's going on?
For the most part.
Okay, but this is generally for scouting enemy teams, right? So in League of Legends, it's a 5v5 game, so they'll have 5 members on the enemy team, and they all go through different roles and stuff. And one of the things that I noticed would take up a lot of time for my coach is like just like getting like that information down for like what everyone plays, what's their win rate, how often do they play that stuff. And so I wondered, okay, can I automate it, right? And there's this website called like op.gg where you can kind of get the information, or you can get the information from it. So I was like, okay, can I use the way op.gg like I guess keeps their information to basically generate this information automatically in the sheets? And an example of that would be, sorry, ignore that. And basically what would happen was all you have to do is input their names of the enemies, and that's given to you by the I guess the tournament. They'll give you who you're playing against, and this will automatically just pull from that website all that stuff. I feel like it's like learning all that stuff was like interesting. And the thing with this is I actually couldn't do this like directly and get it in this format. So I have this like sheet of you're not supposed to look at this, which looks like this, which like basically grabs like all the information, and I like
Did she cut out for anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like everybody froze on my end for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird.
I don't even see her anymore.
On my screen, her face is still there, but it's just frozen everything. Okay, we'll wait for 5 seconds, and in case that she didn't come back, we'll. Oh, are you back, Tiara?
how long was I gone for?
A minute or two.
Oh no, I was talking to myself. I guess to make long story, I guess short, is I worked on Google Sheets starting off with this. And then my dad, he works in a hospital, right? And one of the problems they had was, so they normally have this like physical sheet where they'd write down things for where everyone goes in the hospital and stuff, right? But they would have problems with people like either double booking, or in the sense of a hospital, you have to give someone lunch. Like you can't just leave when it's like your lunch break. Someone has to go and like replace you for their time, and they would have problems with double booking that. So I created a system, which I don't think I can actually show you because I don't want to accidentally give people's information away. I basically created a way to like automate it and catch things. And that's kind of like divulged into like, okay, wait, we can actually use this for a lot more. It's gotten to like a bigger and bigger project. I think even now we're still like doing more, I guess, stuff to it. And it's just like lots of fun. And that's why I did my summer Google Sheets.
Great. Yeah, I also learned Google Sheets once I started the new position as a chair, because there are so many stuffs that I have to handle. So, and I gradually learn more and more functions about it. Okay, great. Any questions for Tiara?
Is League of Legends the card game or like a?
I think it's an online computer game, right?
So League of Legends is it's a MOBA, if you know the genre, multiplayer online battle arena, where they pretty much take 5 people versus 5 people. You're put in an arena and you're basically fighting to get each other's base. That's generally what it is.
All right.
Any other questions? Yeah, I posted the website in the chat. Go ahead, sorry.
It's okay. So for your project, you essentially took in these massive amounts of data and just sort of made it a lot easier to read, right?
Yes. I guess that's generally what I did. Also, like there's a little bit of analysis in it too. with some of the stuff.
Okay. Did you run into any like big snags along the way besides just learning it initially?
I want to say my answer is kind of like yes, but the question is remembering what was the problem, because like after I like would hit a wall and I finally got through the wall, I don't remember the wall. It's in the past. I guess one that was big, not for the League of Legends one, but for the hospital one, was it was keeping track of, it was time, and I'm not sure. Am I still sharing my screen? Okay, I'm not. So I can like look at it. There is this one like check that had to be done with relating time and lunch and Google Sheets. And it was like the problem of like trying to do data validation, but against like I guess two things at the same time. It was just like really complicated, and eventually actually my friend actually helped me figure out. We like spent like hours on it at night just trying to figure out how do we do this, because we tried like so many different solutions that seemed like they'd work but they didn't, or there would be like problems where it said I don't remember, but yes, there were definitely lots of snags. Any other questions?
Okay, so if no questions, thank you very much, Tiara, for sharing. Who would like to be next? Martin?
Yeah, I can go next.
Okay.
One sharing. All right. All right. All right. So this summer, I spent my time learning Godot game engine, and one of the reasons why I picked Godot out of the other popular game engines like Unreal and Unity was that it works right out of the box. Another reason was there's no external editor, so everything's is just built into the program. One click export to platform, to any platform like Linux, Mac, Windows, Android. So it was really, really versatile. And one of the main things I wanted to use it for was this Python like syntax. I feel like that's really a plus when it comes to game design over, C# and C++, which is Unity and Unreal. The game I made is called Eyes of the Omniscient. It's similar to Carrie HK's Evolution Simulator if you ever played it online. I mean, watch his videos online. And the purpose is just to watch things change over time. That's really like what I'm big into is watching things change using a genetic algorithm. But I want to try it a little bit different this time, like a different approach. What I learned a lot about code reusability, and I feel like these kind of projects really teaches you a lot about practical programming in a real environment. And I learned more about how classes and polymorphism is really just not for show. When you learn it in class, you're like, okay, I have a person, make a human inherit from person, and you can make different types of people. And in class, that makes sense, but you don't really see how it can be used, in a real environment until you really get into projects and stuff. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I learned. Is there another tab? Nope. And I'll pull up the game I have. I have a version of it on my phone, but I also have this version. Oh, I don't know if you can see it. Do you see anything pop up or no?
Not perfectly.
Let's see.
You probably have to share the whole screen, or maybe you have to switch the sharing to other things you are sharing. Yeah.
Oh, show all the windows. Does this work?
Yeah, all the windows. Or yeah.
All right. So this is how my game looks when you first log in. And there's mission store settings. These three things don't really work that well. There's a store, but there's not much in it because I had time constraints. But there's 5 missions here, and the first one teaches you about shows you basically get used to the editor. It's kind of one of those throwaway missions, and just basically spawning 5 balls. You can left click, or I normally use this part here. You can spawn in 2 types, an aging ball or an immortal ball. The aging one dies after a certain amount of time. You can see there. And then the immortal one just doesn't. If we, I think wait about 30 seconds, it'll disappear, but we're not gonna, yeah, there you go, it disappeared. And now the main part that I really like is something called dish mode, which is basically you get to experiment with different cell types. And one thing that I did make a mistake on while I was making this is I kind of got my objective confused and mixed up. In Carry HK's original application, individual circles were their own creature. So I kind of took that approach, but eventually I kind of forgotten about that and started making less than ideal like components essentially. So I don't want to take up too much time, but essentially we can spawn in a certain amount of creatures, and we can give them possible skills, which changes during DNA replication. Let's just add stuff like this. And then we'll make it so that some of them can be sticky if they evolve differently. And basically you just sit here and watch, and you can also have a little bit more fun. Let's add a cap here. My keyboard fell asleep. And once we're over this cap, we just kind of stop spawning in stuff. I should probably spawn in not that many. About 50. And yeah, it's basically supposed to be kind of one of those relaxing games. You sit here and you just do stuff. And we can add certain areas. Like this one gives more energy to blue type creatures. It doesn't look that way because I didn't get that far into customability into the areas, but that's essentially how I kind of get started with game development in Godot.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What made you choose what is it, Godot? Is that the one that you're using?
Yeah, Godot.
What made you choose that engine over, say, Unity or Unreal?
The main difference between the reason I chose this one because I'm a little bit experienced in Unity, and I really like Unity when it had mono develop, which was their C# IDE for Unity. But after I forgot which update it was, they discontinued support for it, and I didn't like the Visual Studio Unity back and forth workflow. And Visual Studios didn't work on my computer that well. It crashed frequently, stuff like that. And I didn't like Unreal because the editor was not minimal, and my computer also had trouble running that too. This is Godot editor here, which I find much more modern compared to other game engines, and just a lot more intuitive. Like if I click asset library, I expect to see that there, see like assets appear, but in Unreal, you might not, what you're looking for might not be just a single click away. Performance-wise, it's pretty much similar for most games.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the code for this on GitHub?
The code for this is on GitHub. It's at I don't know if it's private repository or not.
I highly recommend making it public.
Yeah, I will.
And do you have a LinkedIn? Because I would put a post about it on your LinkedIn.
How do I get to chat? Yeah, I have a LinkedIn and a GitHub.
So what I would say is like something that's really important is that's pretty cool that you made that. And so that's valid experience. You even talked about polymorphism, like managing classes. Working on games is a really cool project because it replicates real world work. So something that's really important is that places and companies know that this is something that you've done. So definitely, if it's not already there, put a link to your GitHub on your LinkedIn. And if you want to like fine tune the project a little bit so you can get like some screenshots specifically, and then make a post like, hey, over this period of time, over the summer or something like that, this is what I did. Check it out and put it on your LinkedIn. Places eat that up and it's pretty cool. So that would be my recommendation. You have all the pieces, just send it.
All right, will do.
And the good thing about GitHub is for all the commits, for all the changes you make, they can see that you're really committed to it because you pretty much do it every week. Instead of you do it for like every year you did one or twice on your project, that will not be that good, but yeah. Mhm.
I would also add to that even just showing that you understand like what actively updating a GitHub repository does is really helpful because source control is something not that many people do prior to graduating. But post grad, literally everything you're ever going to do has to involve source control. So definitely get used to using GitHub, get used to using Bitbucket if you have the opportunity, because those are things that you're going to use in the real world. And showing that you can use those is really important.
All right. Is Bitbucket also version control as well?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's kind of like a different type of GitHub. It's
All right.
depending on certain projects, you maybe use GitHub, you maybe use Bitbucket. Bitbucket is yeah, I mean, I basically just described it. It's another version of source control, but I don't know if there is a distinct difference. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think
Dr. Lin.
behind the scene, they both use Git.
Yeah, I would say that I think Bitbucket just has a different interface. I think Bitbucket has a better interface for working on a project with a lot of moving parts, but probably uses Git. Whereas GitHub, I would say, is visually speaking better for like smaller projects. But in my experience, like we use Bitbucket a lot in my company, and there's like 300 commits or something like that. And so Bitbucket is better at showing that, whereas in my opinion, my experience with GitHub is not as well suited to visualize that. So I think that's the biggest difference. Thanks for Lynn for helping me out. I was kind of drowning.
I started with Bitbucket because initially they offer free private repository, but now GitHub also has free private repositories. So, and there are plenty of these online repository using Git, like GitLab or others. Yeah. Any other questions? No. Okay. Then we'll move on to the last speaker, Chandler. Now,
Okay, so over the summer, I continued working on my game. I've been working on this game for like 4 years. So I started working on it when I was a junior in high school, and I'm a junior in college now. My major is computer science with a focus of gaming technology. Pretty much this summer was pretty significant because I actually I launched a Steam page. I effectively formed a business too, technically. I formed an LLC to sell my game. The LLC offers the legal protections and stuff, and not only that, it looks more professional if you're working with a publisher or something like that. Haven't started working with that yet, but yeah, I can show you some of the stuff that I did. Let's see here. We'll just go screen one and we'll pop it up. So I worked on a Steam page, and my game is basically a ball maze game. It's made in Unreal Engine. There's different balls that have different abilities and stuff, so they're all pretty unique. And I pretty much have just been kind of working on this on and off through the last 4 years. using Unreal Engine. I also spent my summer also making YouTube videos teaching how to make video games and stuff. So I obviously learned video editing skills, Photoshop, all sorts of different stuff while making YouTube videos on how to make video games and stuff, and also how to code. So I've been also working on teaching people how to code in C#. I plan on doing one for C++ and maybe even Java, but a lot of game development stuff that I've been just working on, and also working on making my game for Steam. I plan to release it in 2022 at some point, so that's going to be coming out next year. It's been a really cool learning process, to say the least. It's just been kind of just coming along, you know. It's a slow but sure process, and I've kind of learned a lot of different things with regards to how to make a Steam page, different programming stuff for my game. My game is made in Unreal Engine, primarily I use the Unreal Engine's blueprinting system and C++ to make it all happen. So yeah, I could show you the game. I have a built version that we can play, but I think it'd probably be better to do the engine, because the built version that I have is kind of like a couple months old and probably has bugs in it. So I can show you the game. We'll go ahead and play it. I don't know if the sound comes through on this, but basically, this is the game. I have controller support too. This was a pain in the butt to add. I don't know why it was a pain in the butt to add. You'd think with Unreal Engine being a AAA engine made by Epic Games that it would be easier. Oh, and that's unfortunate because the button can be obnoxious. But yeah, there's different balls, as you can see. And there's a challenge mode and a selection of mazes. So, and yeah, it also has ray tracing too. So I managed to implement that over the summer as well. I've been having trouble making it work with the graphics menu. I've been continuously working on this graphics menu for several months, and I've been having problems with it. So several redesigns have happened too. So it's been pretty great on that. But yeah, I could show you the ray tracing on one of the levels here. So we'll just take level 9 here. So it also has NVIDIA DLSS. The cool thing is Unreal Engine makes it super easy to add these things. So you don't, it's easy, but it also takes a little bit of work trying to tweak it and get it to work correctly. But yeah, I can show you the ray tracing on here. It's pretty cool. As you can see, looking at the walls here, the walls are reflective. So when we turn it on, you can see that they become more clear and more reflective. So like, as you can see the ball reflecting in the wall. It's pretty cool. And the same thing here with this. I do plan on at some point using GitHub for source control, because I haven't done that yet, as a way of backing up my project. I've been backing it up in not very an effective way, basically just using a separate hard drive and making a whole bunch of copies of the project when I could just use GitHub. But yeah, and that's pretty much what I worked on this summer. Is I just worked on my game. I also took a class at my local community college and also work a part-time job, but mainly what I did was worked on this and got my Steam page going, which I'm sitting at about 120 wish lists, I think, right now. And yeah, I would show my website, but my website's kind of broken right now. I completely accidentally ruined it. So I'm going through and fixing that.
You can even do the version control for your website.
Yeah, see, what I'm using Weebly for my website, and I accidentally hit publish when I removed everything to redesign the website to go along with my forming of technically my company, because before it was just for the game, but now it's for everything else too. So future releases and stuff like that, but I kind of accidentally hit publish and after I removed everything, so now the website's just kind of blank, and I'm just kind of fixing it still. I wish I could roll it back, but they don't offer a way to roll it back. At least as far as I know, they don't. But yeah. And as a result, I'm having to deal with a little bit of customization using CSS and stuff to make it look the way that I want it to. But that's a whole nother learning process that I'm going through.
Questions
Yeah,
from
that's
the
pretty much what
audience?
I've been working on. And I've continued working on it through this school year also. So I've been working on it throughout the fall as well. Oh, I've also learned a little bit about how to create music too, because I have to create music for the game. So it's just everything. I'm learning everything.
Question. But although it's Unity, what's your frame rate like with ray tracing?
So I have an RTX 2080.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so with Unreal Engine, I'm running it in the version 4.26 right now. Previous versions, it ran a little bit worse, probably because of optimizations on the engine side weren't as good as they are now. As of right now, I'm pretty sure I could run it maxed out at 4K at about 60 FPS, maybe a little bit more than that. So it's really not that crazy. And basically from what the settings I have set up is basically it goes from just shadows to full-blown global illumination. So it's basically like I just have shadows on to I want to melt my computer. Settings, that's pretty much what I got. Yeah, so I've kind of just worked on getting all that to work. I've had some issues with the turning on and off the ray tracing using the graphics menu. I was gonna participate in Steam's Next Fest. Was gonna do it this October, and I couldn't make the demo work in time because the graphics screen wasn't working. And I can't have like ray tracing on for everybody because not everyone has an RTX card or the new Radeon cards that have the ray accelerator. So I can't have that on all the time because that would melt too many computers. What the game wouldn't run optimally on the hardware that doesn't have the ray accelerators on them. So I had to pull out of that because I couldn't get that working in time, despite working on it for weeks, trying to get the graphics menu to work with actually turning on and off the ray tracing. It was weird. It was a whole bunch of bugs with it that I gotta fix, but yeah.
And one more thing too, because I just got introduced to visual shaders, which is similar to blueprints in Unity. And I was wondering how big of a role does blueprints play in the development process?
So I've used blueprinting for almost everything in the project so far. There have been a few instances where blueprinting just wasn't enough for me and I needed to do the C++ code. Because there are limitations on blueprinting, but a lot of what you can do in actual coding, you can do in blueprinting. So like I could show you one of my menus for the controller support. And that used the Unreal Engine's widget thing and let me just grab a quick scene real quick here and let me share my screen again. Can I show this? Yes, I can show the specific application. Okay, cool. So basically it's using Unreal Engine's widget thing and then it uses blueprints. So let me go to the event graph here and it just uses the blueprints. You could do this all in C++ if you wanted to. It's basically the same process. It's just that it's using the nodes. It works pretty good. I have a couple of arrays here. One is for the buttons, because when you use the controller and you scroll up and down using the joystick, you want each of the buttons to change color and stuff. So that's what the array is for. And then I have an image array to show the images of the given levels. So as you can see, like there's a level here that's on the screen and I can show the individual images and I have an array for that. I used a couple of for each loops to display them and change the color of the buttons. And each of the buttons have their each own enables, and I use the save game to determine whether or not the buttons are able to be enabled or disabled. Because if you don't have a level that's unlocked, you shouldn't be able to go and just play any level you want. You have to unlock the levels first. And I have a whole bunch of these things to do that. This basically receives what you want to do. So you can either go up, down, and it'll update the button appearance in each of these different functions. And yeah, and it works with both keyboard and mouse. It works with keyboard, mouse, controller. And the effect is pretty cool. The menu actually will wrap around, which is something I wanted to make the menus actually be able to, my mouse wouldn't get in the way here, but to actually wrap around and go up and down. Unreal Engine does have a basic controller input thing, but it's not very good. So you want to have controller support for your menus, you're going to have to work a little harder for it, I guess. But I'm pretty happy with the result. As you can see, we have update the button appearances using a couple of for each loops and changing the images, setting them visible and not visible, depending on what part of the array we're at. And we use a couple of ints to keep track of where we're at in the array. Yeah, so that's pretty, and this also keeps track of the button pressing and stuff. I wish there was a more better way for doing this, but for some reason, this seems to be the only way to make this work. This looks complicated, but it's really not. All we're running it through is a whole bunch of basically if-else statements, but it's true or false, and then it will go through and set controller input or not. Basically, that determines whether or not the little AB button back here is going to pop up. And yeah, so that's what I use for mainly a lot of the programming aspects for the game is the blueprinting. And there isn't really much of a performance hitch that I've noticed based off of using it. Although I'm sure C++ would be much more efficient and faster, I'm sure, because C++ is just super fast. But blueprinting is fine. It's not like it's a AAA title or something like that where it has to be super duper efficient. You know, it's just a small little indie game. So.
Yara, you have a question earlier? No? Okay, so any other questions from the audience?
Actually, I do remember what my question was.
Sure.
So, do you find that like starting like 4 years ago and still working right now, there are things you did like 4 years ago that are like, oh, I have to like redo all this. This is no longer good.
Yes, I've had those situations where I've went back and looked at the code for something and I was like, Chandler, what are you doing? Why did you do that? And then I went back and fixed it. Yes, I've had those instances where I've looked back at my previous code and was like, this is completely retarded. Yeah, I've particularly with my save game as of recently, I coded that up a couple years back, but I think it was before I got into college. And instead of housing all my Booleans for whether or not the levels are all unlocked in an array, I had them all individually declared as Booleans instead of a Boolean array. And when I went back to actually redo my save system and I'll put it into one big save, I was like, why did I do that? Just use an array. It's faster and easier. So that's actually one time that I could name that where I didn't know why I coded it that way in the first place, but obviously I would like to think I've gotten better at programming now than I was back before I was in college. So yeah, there are times where I do look back and it's like, yeah, I could have done that more efficiently. And there's times where I've redone entire things like my menu system. The menu system that you just seen is actually the most recent iteration of it. I've went through several iterations of redoing the menu system to make it look better and more professional, I guess you can say. The original one looked really bad, but it was fine at the time. But for trying to release a game on Steam, you want it to look really good. And I think I've kind of achieved that with the new menu.
Okay, we have a couple more minutes, so I would like to open it up for questions for all the presenters. Any other more questions for all the presenters? For example, for Zach to share more experience about his maybe even looking for a job, internship, or whatever, or other questions. Anyone? You should have a lot of questions.
I've got a question here for Zach. When it comes to getting your name out there and networking, what do you think is best? Because I know you suggested LinkedIn and putting the GitHub file and stuff earlier, but I was just wondering what you would think the best way to get your name out there would be.
Yeah, so good question. So definitely, I think in our modern time, not having a LinkedIn is literally a detriment. 9 times out of 10, you're going to see an opportunity, you're going to apply to an opportunity, and a company looking for someone to hire is going to do so through LinkedIn, especially in regards to tech. That is how they find people. This is how you're going to find out about opportunities. And not having a LinkedIn and not having your resume on it, and or actually well-defined stuff. You guys can look at my LinkedIn. I think it's kind of pretty. I have an updated resume. My resume is kind of old that's on there. But again, I welcome you guys to like steal my stuff. Go ahead, take it. Because if people go, and it's another way to look professional. It's like an advanced resume. Think of that. The LinkedIn is putting like a more detailed ability. It's like social media, but for jobs. So not having it in our modern times is a detriment. So definitely make sure you have a LinkedIn. Get like a headshot or like I know for a long time I didn't have my normal, like I didn't have a professional headshot, I should say. I had a headshot of me using the HoloLens. That's fine too. If you have like a headshot of you like in action doing stuff, that's fine. But make sure it looks professional and clean. And definitely, over project yourself. Make yourself as enticing as possible. Now, obviously, don't lie and say like you got a PhD or something. But if like you're familiar with C++, but it's like been a year, don't be afraid to put that on there because you know it. You just got to relearn. Again, it's all about showing your ability to learn new stuff. So that's one. Two, Bradley does a bunch of stuff. If you didn't go to I know the job fair was weird. I was actually at it this year. So I may have seen some of you there. But go to the job fairs, I know ACM does like postings about job opportunities and stuff like that. I think being a part of ACM, going to the hackathons and things like that, that's like if you literally feel like, hey, there's nothing I can do to boost my resume, go to one and then put it on your resume, put it on your LinkedIn. That's something. And you'll learn, you'll be collaborating. Maybe you go to a hackathon and you meet someone who's like, oh man, I really want to do this project. And you're like, hey, that sounds kind of cool. Boom, easy. Now you're doing something fun that you're enjoying. It's like a networking. That's an opportunity to network. Going to the job fair is an opportunity to network. Just figuring out what projects that are going on campus and then trying to get involved with them is a way to network. Even I know JR was talking about like league club. My brother is on the league team too. He's Ben, so you guys know each other. But like that is an opportunity to work with like a bunch of other people who want to work on a project. Like the tool that she made, I meant to pipe in earlier, but one, that tool is really sick. And two, I also play League, but not as great. But again, that's a cool tool. And you could actually do a lot of really cool things with that. You could make a website that basically tables that spreadsheet, that CSV, and puts it in like a really pretty format. And if you did that like simple transition, it's not as simple as I described it. You would need to do some PHP and some data management. But if you did that and then put up a website and then put that on your LinkedIn, that would be nuts. Like that would be huge. That is a really sick project. And you could probably get a few people who would be interested in that, whether they play League or not, to help you out with that. I'm sure a lot of the professors at Bradley would be willing to help you out with that. And that is, again, finding opportunities in small little things is a way to network. And on top of that, another thing I would say, so I guess to recap, go to basically any job related event on campus. Just do it because that's an opportunity for you to meet people, put a name to a face. I can tell you like firsthand, my freshman year, I literally didn't have like anything on my resume. I'm not trying to like give you like a self-help guide to like the world. I'm just saying this is what worked for me. I didn't really have anything on my resume freshman year. I went to the job fair. I talked to John Deere there. They obviously didn't interview me. The next year, I made it. I got an offer from them. I had 2-round interviews, one of which I went all the way to John Deere headquarters, which is super badass, by the way. And I interviewed there, but I actually had a better offer. So I chose that one. That's what I'm saying is like putting a face to your name is invaluable. They're more likely to give you an interview if they know you, you're familiar, you're committed and interested. Another thing is specifically as it pertains to the job fair, don't go there without looking anything up and not knowing what companies are there. That is, you might as well not go. Bradley provides like an awesome environment where you, as the person looking for a job, actually have an advantage. And what I mean by that, and LinkedIn does this too, but I'll get to that in a second. You get to look up the opportunities on the Bradley network that are going to be at the job fair. I can tell you that I was more prepared for conversations with people who were there to hire, like HR people, than they were because I read the job description and I came asking questions about it. And they don't know because they're not tech people. So then I immediately skip the line and start talking to basically like the project manager who's there to represent the company and see who they're going to interview. That is a huge advantage. Instead of saying, hey, what do you guys do? To say, hey, I read about your opportunity. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. That shows that one, you're interested. And two, it gives you an advantage coming in. You're on the offense, asking questions and finding out more about the opportunity, which is good for you because you find out whether or not you want to do it. And it also shows that you have actual interest. So that's another really good way. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of the fact that you basically get all the tools to go into a job fair and just go off. I would say like the way I went about it is I typically had a busy schedule, so I could only be there for like an hour or two. So I would pick like 4 or 5 companies and opportunities that I was really interested in, and I would hit all those spots, and then I would leave. And I'm being honest that because I strategized that way, I pretty much landed like 4 interviews every job fair I went to because I knew what the internships were, and I had a plan on what I was going to say to them and what I was going to ask them about. And I would advise that you use this strategy. As for doing it on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is another opportunity where you see what the job is about. So if you get to an interview stage, which most of the time what will happen is you'll get an interview that's more of like a digital handshake, a behavioral interview to see if they like you. And then they'll have like a more intense interview. You may interview with more than one person. That is commonplace. So the first interview is basically what I would define as a vibe check most of the time. They see if they like you, see if they don't. And then after that, they're like, okay, maybe we'll ask more technical questions. Maybe we'll ask more about their experience. So don't get to the point where you're getting interviewed because at that point you one already applied to it. So you read the description, you liked it, you read it. And then 2, they gave you an interview time slot. Don't show up to that vibe check interview not knowing what the job is. That would be like terrible. You have an advantage. You know what it's about. Talk about it. Ask questions. Show that you're interested because nothing upsets a company more than like spending their time on you for you to say like, I don't know what you guys do. I don't know what's going on here. Immediate, you're not getting the job, dude. So use that to your advantage. The other thing is, especially on LinkedIn, if you're really harping for a job, just like what honestly a productive strategy, machine gun apply to everything. Like literally, you like look up what you're interested in, go to the easy apply section and just apply to a bunch of stuff. Just mass apply because again, who knows if you're going to get it? You don't know. Obviously, read the stuff. Don't apply to something that sounds like torture. Read it, then apply. But the point is, the more you put yourself out there, the more you're going to hear back. So let's say you apply to like 30 places, but you only hear back from 5. That's still awesome, dude. That's still 5 interviews or 5 notices on whether or not they're interested in you. And those are 5 opportunities for you to practice interviewing, practice presenting yourself, and 5 potential opportunities for you to get an offer. And the cool thing is the more offers, the more competitive you get to make it. Let's say company A and company B both give you an offer, but one has something that the other one doesn't. You can use that as leverage. This is where you as the worker actually get to hire the demands. You say, hey, I have this other offer and they're giving me this. And then they say, if they really want you, they'll match or even go above that. So then you win. So more opportunities. Sorry, one of my siblings is, oh, that's cool. Sorry. But again, more opportunities means it allows you to be more competitive. And being able to negotiate and experiencing negotiating like opportunities and job offers is a valid experience because that's something you're going to experience all the time and will allow you to get more out of the offers. Sorry, I got interrupted by my brother, but yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Just again, put yourself out there as much as possible, interact with people face to face when you get the opportunity to, and get used to being in interview environments because how you present yourself is probably the most important thing. You could interview way above your actual skill level and still get a job. And most of the time, especially entry level stuff, you're going to be doing that. So you need to be prepared to do it. And so that is like my biggest recommendation of all is get used to interviewing and put yourself out there as much as possible at every opportunity as possible. It can be exhausting, it can be disheartening. Like you apply to a bunch of places, you don't hear back, but that's just the reality of how applying to jobs feels, especially when there's, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of CS jobs. And I know a big thing is like a lot of CS people, not the stereotype, are a little nervous and a little anxious, especially if they're not used to those type of environments. And the only way to get used to it is trial by fire. Throw yourself into it. You're going to have to do it. So you have to be comfortable in that environment.
Very great experience sharing. Any more questions? No more questions? Okay, so if there's no more questions, we are already at 6 o'clock. I want to give my deepest appreciation to the presenters. Thank you all for sharing your valuable experience, as well as whether that's in the real job or summer projects, everything, and even the projects which you have done for several years. That's actually really amazing. And actually, I know there are some people who are actually on the same boat. They're also developing their own game stuffs and things like that. So I wish you all take this valuable experience and then start building your portfolio. Okay, don't leave your portfolio empty before you leave Bradley. Yeah. Okay, thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks for
guys.
sharing your
Thank you.
experiences. Appreciate it.